We'll get started with hearing of citizens' comments. Before we open it up for open comments, we'll start with Mr. Monk and Mr. Melkersman representing Cooper County.
Come on, I'll get one too. Double team this thing. Well, thank you all for letting us come. One of the things that we're trying to do is get the message out about this senior citizen tax freeze, mainly because it is a voluntary process. So if people don't come in and apply for it, they cannot receive the tax freeze. So we're trying to have these meetings at various places and try to inform the public of what's going on. So I'm going to give a little bit of history on this, and Charlie will take over on the other parts of it. So,
Mr. Monk, can you go to the mic so everyone else can hear you?
Sure, I'm sorry.
We want to hear you on the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe. All right, so in 23, the legislature passed Senate Bill 190. The premise of Senate Bill 190 in our eyes was a great premise, but the language of the bill was terrible. It identified that you were eligible for this tax credit if you were eligible for Social Security. Well, that had a lot of variance. Like, for instance, when you take your first job, you're really eligible for Social Security at that point. Are you disabled and eligible for Social Security? So there was a lot of variance in that, and it just was a difficult thing. And then from the standpoint of the courthouse, do we go back to when somebody was Social Security eligible? Like I always refer to Grandma Bell, lives in the same house since 1966. Do we have to go back and cover that area because she's now Social Security eligible? So the language in it was really bad. Also, when it talked about the taxing subdivisions, the bill itself at one point said that you could cover all taxing subdivisions, but then in another paragraph it said it only applied to county taxes. Well, county taxes are only 3%. So really, if that was the case, and then we felt that would be what would litigate out of this, because it would be up for such litigation from the other subdivisions, that 3% really made that bill meaningless. So why would he even mess with it? It's because it would not fulfill the promise of the bill. So we went to the MAC conference, and the Missouri Association of Counties came up with a proposition to go to legislation, change the language of it, make it a little more clear and concise language in there that we could deal with. And so they came back, and the legislature passed Senate Bill 756, which changed the whole language of it. It identified that this was 62 instead of Social Security eligible. It identified the homestead. It also gave the authority to integrate all taxing subdivisions, which now led to a more meaningful subsidy. So when that happened, we were in position. I actually drafted the ordinance, sent it to our attorneys, and they sent it back, and it was completely different because they're better at it than I am, which is good. And when we were ready to go, but we still had to wait for the governor to sign the bill because Senate Bill 190 was the law of the land. So until he signed it, we couldn't act on 756. When they signed 756, that was the time that we put our ordinance in place. There was what we felt were entities out there that were going to bring forth a petition, and that petition would override anything we did, and we would have to act on the petition. So we felt the ordinance was the thing to do. We had a lot of conferences with the superintendents to understand the impact of this, but we wanted to kind of take the ordinance because there was things within the courthouse that we had to take care of as far as integrating this to the office, so understanding how we can handle the flow of people in there and then how we carry the flow of information out. We also wanted to kind of control the language. And one of the things that we have done, which is unique to Cooper County in the state, you know, there's several counties in the state that have implemented this, and it'll probably be most every county will, either by ordinance or by petition. But one thing that's very unique to Cooper County is we're making this a one-time application. No other county in the state is doing a one-time application. They have to redo every year. We thought that redoing it every year for Grandma Bell is kind of punitive. It's difficult for some people to get out of their house. They might forget about doing it in any particular year. So we thought that we could handle this at one time. We don't have a lot of senior citizens going to be eligible for this. We're also taking their money, we're taking your money to implement this. It's taxpayer dollars. And we do that to operate the courthouse. So we kind of felt like maybe we ought to work at this a little bit instead of the citizens having to work at it. So we got in communication with the health department, and we talked within the courthouse itself, and we've come up with a strategy that I think we can do this as a one-time application and a lifetime application. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of this. So Charlie, I'll let you go ahead and speak to it.
Because we'll share back and forth, but again, to George's point, when Senate Bill 190 was passed, there was a lot of criticism even from the legislators about, it was litigated, susceptible, and et cetera, and et cetera. And MAC went back and they did a great job, as George outlined, in doing this, and our legislatures did a better job. And when Governor Parsons signed that Senate Bill 190, he kind of said, how can I not but sign it? I mean, from that standpoint, because, it's passed very quickly and et cetera. But also they were very attentive the following year, which was his most recent year, in putting these changes together, and it made a whole lot of sense. The premise was always good, and now they've got some things that you can really understand, because that 62 becomes a much better threshold. And that is age 62. I was conveying back here that is age 62 anywhere in 2025. The application must be received no earlier than January 1, and we emphasize no earlier than January 1 because we've had a couple of people that have already brought them in. But already George and I have probably given the same message to probably a couple hundred people, different organizations, and so that will happen on occasion. But the end date next year is September 15th because we need an end date. Therefore, any one person that's making an application, and the reason we're giving out these applications, one is for someone, and George will talk a little more about this, is to understand what information is needed to complete this application. So somebody really can take October, November, December, and take a look at this application, and then they can pull this information. And one of the greatest resources is simply the elected officials in the courthouse. But again, George is going to, go over how you can pull it off a site as well too, for those people that desire to do that. But again, the assessor is there, the recorder's there, the collector. Each one of those have specific duties and responsibilities with this. So we want the application out in front of people to be turned in no earlier in January 1, which is going to be a holiday, so therefore after, and then by September 15th. Now, we'll get a little more in depth with this. So if somebody fails to, and I agree with George, one of the worst things that can happen is somebody just simply said, I did not know. And we've shared this application with people that are quite young as well, and that's fine because we tell them, we were up in Prairie Home with Lions Club, and there was a young gentleman there that says, may I take one of these applications home to my mom and dad, who were at that age, and he had a grandfather and grandmother the same way. So he was able to go to them, not explain what we were explaining, but say, hey, look, you need to look into this, because what we indicate is that if you pass this off to somebody, somebody's got a question, they can call us, and we'll walk it through with them. When they do complete the application, they submit it, they would take it into the clerk's office, because they're what we call the guardian or the caretaker of records, and George will go into more detail with that. One of the things I like to make a point about that time frame, though, is if somebody just overtly just doesn't get one in between September, looks like I moved, I'm sorry, September 1 through, or January 1 through September 15th, they can do one the following year. They don't capture next year, 2025, because but it's frozen for this year. Once this year's ended, whatever that real estate tax is, it is there for them. Even if 3 years out they've not made application for that, it reverts back to what it is now, unless, and George can go into some thoughts about remodeling or those sort of things.
Sure. So the tax credit only applies to your homestead. And I use my place as an example. The plot of land that the assessor has on mine has 154 acres, and our house is on that plot. So some people might think, well, I'm gonna be tax-free on that, or tax frozen on that 154, but it's not true. So in October, after they passed Senate Bill 190, we went over to the assessor's office and spoke with the assessor and looked at a lot of properties. And we're very confident that she has this broken down to a few acres per homestead. It's like on my place, 154 acres is the plot, but there's only 3 acres that applies to my house. So that's pretty good. We want to stress that this only takes place on the house, on the homestead. So you have to live in that homestead. You can apply for 2, you can only have 1. If you're part of a trust, if you live in the house, then you can receive the tax credit, but nobody else in that trust can receive that tax credit. If you have outbuildings, like, where's my thing? This one right here it is. So we're encouraging people to go to the GIS system, which is at the assessor's website. You can go to Cooper County Integrity and search it on the internet and get the same website. And from that, you can gather all the information that you need for the application. So the application, like on my place, I have on the GIS system, there's several buildings here. There's a residence, a shed, 2 barns, another residence, which we built for my mom and dad several years ago, and then a couple more barns. And that's all in that 3 acres. So you might think that you're going to be able to receive the tax credit for that, but that's not true because the residence is highly identified on there. So the first residence is the one that you're going to receive the tax credit for. We've had a question about a garage. If your garage is attached, you're likely going to receive the tax credit. If it's not, you're likely not going to receive it. And the way you're going to be able to tell is look on that GIS. If you see garage on there, then it's not applicable for the tax credit. If you have any questions on this, which I know we're going to probably get into the money and the impact it has on each of the subdivisions in a minute, we'll take them. And that's kind of helps us direct this. So if you have any questions, please ask us. I guess I think I'll go through the application that we have. So the first thing that individuals have to have, like Charlie mentioned earlier, we hope that people start collecting this information now and then just have it in there. One of the things we've done is on our commissioner's website, we have this as a printable PDF. We don't have it as a fillable PDF, but you can print it out or fill it out and print it online and then bring it in. And one of the reasons we want to do that is because not everybody can come to the courthouse. So if you know somebody that can fill this out, get it notarized at a bank or something like that, and bring it in, or if you know somebody you're going to go collect 10 of these and bring them in, that's great. And we want that because we think there's about 3,000 eligible people in the county, at least at 62 age. And that's going to create a lot of traffic in the courthouse. So the less traffic we have, I think the better it is for us. So if one person brings in multiple applications, we'll have less traffic. It'll be easier for the officers in the courthouse to do that. So on the GIS system, the first thing you need is your parcel identification number, which is the PIN number according to the assessors. And if you get on GIS and you click on your property, like I click on my 154 acres, up in the left-hand portion of that picture, it'll give you a property report card. You click on the property report card, and then this side comes up, okay? And that gives you information about that particular plot of land. And that first thing you need is your parcel number, and that's up at the very top. It's a number with a whole lot of zeros in it, so you don't have, it's just, I can't put my glasses on, sorry. So like ours is 153006, a whole bunch more zeros, and then 600. So that's your parcel identification number. Then down later on, you're going to need to have a proof of identity and age, which is probably going to be a driver's license. Make sure you have proof of residency, which might be your driver's license, maybe some kind of voter registration or something like that. And then you finally need proof of ownership. And from the proof of ownership, we need one of 2 things. We need your booking page, which can also be found on the GIS system. Okay, and that's down here at the bottom. Our booking page is 22124. So if we have that, then that's sufficient. If you have a trust, you won't have a booking page. So you have to, what we need is a copy of your trust. And what we're probably going to suggest you do is bring your trust in, have the clerk copy it. Trusts are important not to get that information out there, and that's why we're doing this in the clerk's office, because they're the recorder of information, and they can secure this better than any of the offices. They have a vault back there that nobody can get to. So the trust has information that we don't need, but we have to have the trust to make sure that you're part of that trust. What we'll do is copy the trust and then store that back in the vault with the clerk's office. And any information that we need, like any pages that we have to pull out, if there's other information on there, we will redact everything on that trust, because this has to go to other offices to be confirmed and then finally collected on. So we're going to be very cognizant of the information on those trusts, that it does not get out of that office.
And if I may say that, information is not subject to a sunshine law request, so.
Yeah, the only thing that we need to provide for sunshine requests would be the identification of the individual who is receiving the tax credit. So that's going to take place in the clerk's office. From there, we're going to have to confirm that the information is correct, because we think that everything on the GIS system is up to date, but sometimes it isn't. So then it will go over to the assessor's office. They'll check the PIN number and they'll check the booking page, then send it over to the collector's office, and the collector's office will then provide the tax credit. So a little bit about how the tax credit works is this year, like Charlie mentioned, it's 2024 is our base year. And one of the reasons that we didn't rush into passing this ordinance is because we knew that this was going to be the base year. As soon as the governor signed it, we knew that we could lock this year in and then next year apply it, so we can start in January. It also gave us a chance to work on policy and procedure within the courthouse to try to figure out how we're going to handle this. And then I think we've done a good job of meeting with the other elected officials. I think we're pretty confident in that. So the tax credit is applied to the household in 2024, and every odd year we go through an assessment. We're going to say it's 8%. It isn't always, but it's easy numbers. So if we go through 10 years, then go to 2034, that's 5 assessments, about 40% raise in the assessed value of that property, and then they apply their factors to it and reduce it down to whatever you're going to pay. So if you own a house now and you make no improvements at all, in 2034, you're going to pay the same amount that you are today. Say you pay $1,000. So for those 5 assessments, the assessment's going to be attached to that household, and it will ride with that household. But in 2034, you're still going to pay $1,000, provided you don't do any improvements. One of the things that the legislature recognized with somebody pretty smart on this thing could build a little bitty shack, and if that was their credit, and then they could just add on to it and have a mansion in 5 or 10 years and still have that little bitty tax credit there. So that's not, so we had to kind of adjust for that. So if you make improvements on your land, like we're getting ready to, on your homestead, we're getting ready to put a deck on the back of my homestead. Unfortunately, I didn't get it in time for this, otherwise I'd receive a little extra credit on it, but I'm not. So that value is going to be added to the assessment. Your original house still has $1,000, and say that deck would add $200 to the value of your, well, it's going to add more than $200, but it's going to add $200 to your tax liability. That will then be added. So then you'd be adding $1,200. But that would be all you'd have for the rest of the time. The assessment stays with the house. So if I sell my house to Drew in 10 years, it's got 5 assessments to it. He's going to have to pay that new assessed value. And that, if he was 62 at the time, that would be his value. Okay? So the assessment stays with the house. Now when you go in and pay your taxes, you're still going to be paying your baseline if you're 62 and over. But there will be a tax credit attached to that. So the credit is the difference between the assessment at that time and your base year. So that will stay with the house, and you'll see that on your tax bill, but you'll still be paying your base year. Okay.
Well, a couple of quirks to that is that, and I was reminded by Gail Lenneman. Gail, as of October 1, will be the new Cooper County assessor. It's public information that Christy is stepping down, and she had 1 more year to go. We've submitted that paperwork to the governor's office. The person that was handling that for us told me that she's going to meet with the governor today. If we didn't hear anything, all the paperwork was fine, and we move on. But Gail had won the election and had no opposition in the general election. But the assessor's office is very key to this as well too, and there's information that can be given. And to George's point, and having talked to all the elected officials to understand accountability and responsibility, because when this first came out, it came out the fact, well, we're going to have to go back 18 years on somebody that's 80 years of age. And Tim Taylor quickly said, unconstitutional, can't do that. So that was squelched, and it took a while to get that to kind of feather out to some degree. But I think everybody's on the same wavelength. These people, you pay these people, tax money pay these people's salaries, and we've encouraged that, this first burst or bubble, it's going to be significant effort for anybody and everybody. We just need to share and get it done, get her done type thing. And again, by only requiring this application one time, then that bubble is gone, pretty much so. Now, one of the things, a little quirk that Gail reminded me of, because we're not assessors by all means, is that sometimes a house, somebody could say, well, Drew, who's 62, put on a bedroom or did something, etc. Well, they may be out in that area and they go by and do an assessment now, and that would hit the first year. So there's little quirks like that that could happen. And then equally, there will be questions that will flow out from this. We had one question about someone that was eligible for this, and it was from their child, but I shouldn't say child, from their daughter. The daughter asked a question about, well, my mother's in a nursing home, my dad's passed away, the nursing home should be temporary. We're not going to raise a great deal of question about that because we feel at this point in time that is still eligible now for that tax credit. However, if that person's in a nursing home and rents the property out, that property is no longer eligible for that tax credit. So there's some of those little quirks, Steve may raise a question that we never even thought about, and we've got to respond to that as well too, because again, as we know, legislatures, when they pass this, cannot contemplate everything that could fall out of a bill as well.
So I suppose you want to hear about the impact of this, right? Because that's where everybody's at, right? So it's difficult. It really is. We have struggled to try to figure out what this impact was. We had conversations with the assessor, with the collectors, to really see where it was. And we certainly had a lot of empathy for what's going to happen to the schools, because schools are about 74% of this taxing credit. So we had discussions with the superintendents to try to figure out the impact of this. And that's also part of why we wanted to kind of control the language of this and take care of the ordinance. We knew that there was at least 2 petitions out there, so we knew this was going to take place, whether we wanted to or not. There is a lot of pressure being put on our rural schools, including Boonville, which is a rural school right now. So we were very cognizant of that and wanted to try to minimize the impact, but it's there. So the best information we have is that about 19% of Cooper County's population of about 17,000 is 62 and older. What the impact of that is, we don't really know.
So that was how much, Mr. Monk?
Sorry?
How much was it?
About 19% of about 17,000 people.
Okay, thank you.
So there's so many variables in that. First off, the thing is this is unrealized tax credit, because you're getting the money you are today. You're not getting a tax cut. You're just not going to get a tax gain on some individuals. Cooper County is very lucky in the fact that we're pretty strong in terms of economic, and Boonville's the same way. Our economic development is really a burgeoning place in this state, and so we get a good tax assessment gain almost every year, just from property tax values going up from.
If I may add, when I came into office, the county was approximately 240 million. Right now it's 325, and we all see those new bills and all the things that are going on. We're very fortunate, unlike some very, very rural counties who have very little activity, if none at all, going on.
So our assessed value is really probably going to continue to go up. So what portion of this does this tax freeze indicate? So if you're 62 years old You may own a house, you may not. So that's one of the problems of saying that it's 19% of the population. We don't know who all owns houses. There's a lot of people out there that rent. My brother rented almost all his life, never owned a house. Are you in a house that is part of a trust? Are you in a nursing home at that particular time and still maintaining your house? Are you, like Charlie said before, are you in a nursing home and then renting your house? How many residences do you own as somebody who's 62 years old? Because this only applies to one of your houses. So it's a difficult number, and I'm unfortunately cannot give you the ultimate impact. We're going to know because we have that tax credit that will be applied. I really don't think the impact is going to be as scary as everybody thinks. One, because I don't think that the 19% is going to be that, everybody in that 19% will be eligible. That'd be about 2,000 or 3,000 people. I think Boone County had 3,000 applications this year already. That's a pretty big county. So I think that we'll probably be down around 2,000 or 3,000. That 1,000 or 2,000 would be probably a better guess of the numbers. City of Boonville is going to be impacted. There's a lot of people living in the city versus the county. Half the population's in Boonville. So I understand the concerns. But I don't think there was any way to avoid this because the petition was going to be brought. Questions?
And I might say about the petition, because George's point's well taken, we know of at least 2 sources with petitions, and it's a very minimal registered voter threshold to get that petition in, and that petition actually can override the ordinance in that manner. Isn't that true, George? So we wanted that ordinance very well written, and again, George did a great job pulling this stuff together, and Travis Elliott, the attorney from MAC, did a great job in kind of finalizing this as well too. It's a very, I think, well-written ordinance from that standpoint. So, but again, we had questions because we were with retired teachers this morning, and helped me from Howard County and says, well, what's Howard County doing? Well, I had a friend of mine call from Howard County, and I said, you need to call the commission there. We don't want to blindside anybody in that nature. And again, senior citizens are voters as well too, by all means. And, to what we've been saying all along, it really has an emotional impact, but the premise, again, is a very valid premise. There's a lot of states, a lot of counties in those states that are doing something very similar to this throughout the whole United States and have done it years ago. Doesn't necessarily make it right, but just to give that historical bit of information.
We answer any questions?
Anyone? What do you guys feel is the biggest challenge facing this increase or the implementation?
Well, from the financial side or let's go from the citizen side first, because it's voluntary. You don't get it unless you come in. And I think that's why we're working so hard to go out to different civic groups, and like why we're here tonight is try to get this information out to the citizens that are eligible for this and make them understand that they have to apply for it. It is a voluntary process. Financially, you got to be concerned. I mean, it's difficult, especially for the schools. We're concerned for the schools because there are a lot of legislation coming from Jeff City that is it's attacking our small schools. Cooper County has 5 high schools, and all of those schools are small, Boonville included. So we're very concerned about the impact on the schools, but I think it was unavoidable. So. Anybody else?
I think, Ian, one key thing, and this is why I passed out some applications when somebody identified they were not of age, so to speak. No different than what we discussed pre-home. If you know someone that's a relative, friend, or whatever, and they're 62, and just put out their senior citizen tax credit. And if they don't know what that means, just either have them call us, maybe give them an application, copy of the application, but they can still call us anytime, and we'll walk it through.
Yeah. Well, we sure appreciate it. Thank you very much for letting us come in.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.